This is the Dreyer Drive podcast, a podcast all about siblings and the people, places, and pop culture that raised us. But you already knew that because you've been to this party before. Today's episode is an episode from the vault, meaning we recorded this episode a few months ago, just before the holiday season got started, and we held on to it to the right time to release it, and that right time is today. This episode gets kicked off with Jacqueline informing us on the hottest trend in the streets of Utah. And then Jacqueline and I will spend a little bit of time talking about the podcasts that we listen to make sure that we stay on top of our game. And we discuss the differences between our podcast and those podcasts. And then we'll jump into today's main topic, which is all about MuchMusic. Yay! MuchMusic was a Canadian iconic video music channel, much like MTV, just with a lot more bare naked ladies. That is a musical group. Sum 41, Katie Lang, Avril Lavigne, The Rascals, and Classified. Again, all musical groups. And after we take a trip down MuchMusic memory lane, we will wrap up this episode the way we wrap up every episode on the Dreyer Drive podcast with an unhinged text message from a family member. And this week's unhinged text message is all about another Canadian icon. Let's jump into this.
Have you heard about the trend in Utah, which is
No, the answer is no. You don't have to finish that sentence. The answer is no. I have not heard about the trend in Utah.
The trend in Utah is a protein Coke. And so you go to the... Did we talk about this before? Or did I tell you?
We talked about it before, and I think my reaction was...
Yeah. Well, I realized that you could do it with like zero sugar root beer. So this morning I had
got grosser.
Protein A&W root beer for breakfast.
That's so disgusting. Listen to what you
Honestly,
just said.
It tastes like a little float.
For breakfast.
But the thing is, if there's protein on it, it becomes a smoothie. So I had a smoothie for breakfast.
I had a root beer smoothie.
No, I've never felt healthier.
Speaking of healthy, we did talk about in a previous episode when I went for my health check last year and how the woman came here to tell me that my waist was 1 centimeter larger than they want it to be. So I needed to lose 1 centimeter. Well, good news. I went for my health check this year. Just recently, we talked about the barium bus. And I think I called it some type of weaponized laxative. But anyways,
yeah,
I got my results back. My waist went down again, so I'm good.
How many centimeters?
By like 2 centimeters. I'm good. I'm in the safe zone.
Okay.
Everything else was good except for I've got high cholesterol. And so they've asked me.
Yeah, guess what? Same. It runs in our family.
Yeah, maybe it's because I eat fried food every day. I'm still there. I used to when I'm living in Canada and traveling to Japan, everything was like, oh yeah, I forgot about all these great things that I can eat all the time. I've been here now for 2 years and I still do it. I'm like, I totally forgot I can eat deep fried everything.
You're still eating like it's your last meal in Japan every single day.
Like I'm going home tomorrow.
One more for the road.
Yeah, that's exactly how I'm eating. So I'm like buckling down right now and starting to okay, I'm a relatively healthy person, but for some reason when I'm walking through the grocery store and I'm like, what's that? Fried chicken with egg salad on top? Yes, I'll take 2.
I'm not a relatively healthy person, so that kind of stuff just sounds great to me. I'm excited. We're going to Canada for Christmas, and I'm already just mental note all the things that I need to eat while I'm there. Specifically, Harvey's is the thing that I usually want the most. Is for people who aren't from Canada, Harvey's is a burger chain, but it's like Subway, where you go along the line for all the toppings that you want, like you would be at a Subway, and it is so good.
I was on Reddit yesterday morning, so I was talking to Seiko about it while I was going through the comments. Somebody had posted on the Okinawa subreddit, hey, what kind of things can I get, American things in Okinawa that they wouldn't have in the rest of Japan? And people were just listing off, the most disgusting things. And also the things they have anywhere in Japan. So, one person was like A&W. And people were like, yeah, A&W. And there's this, all the thread under A&W. They do have A&W here. It is disgusting. It is... Sorry to the sponsor A&W this week, but I don't sell out. All right. I know you guys are giving lots of money for us to talk about A&W, but I also need to keep it real for the fans. It is so horrible. It's like it's been microwaved, but then forgotten in the microwave for 6 days. And they're like, what do we do with this? Perfect timing because somebody has just ordered that. Send it out. And then they give it to me.
But have you tried pouring a protein shake in it?
Can I get some protein in my A&W root beer on top of my burger, please?
It makes it healthier and better is what I've learned.
Yeah, I think anything with the word protein attached to it is healthier. But then people in the thread were like, Rockstar energy drinks. Again, available in every convenience store across Japan. I think people have never, I don't it was a very weird thread to be in because one person was like, Pizza Hut. There are literally over 40 Pizza Hut locations in Tokyo. They're like, what can I get? And one person was like, I've only ever seen Pizza Hut in Osaka. It's another city, but there are hundreds of Pizza Huts across the country.
The only thing I ever miss from the States when I'm traveling is ice in my drinks. Like I love a icy cold drink. And I feel like when I travel, like other countries just don't appreciate the icy cold drink like Americans do. Like Americans love ice in their drinks. Girls love charcuterie boards and Americans love ice in their drinks. That's what I know about people. But like when I travel, that's all I want is like it's a cup that's like 7/8 ice and then whatever drink on top of it.
That's an American thing? Well, mainly because Americans also drink their soda from an actual water cooler jug. Like, you know, one of those giant like 4-gallon tanks. They just put a giant like gasoline jerry can straw on the top and just
they're called Big Bubbas.
They are. I remember going to the gas station near your house and I'm like, are these people trying to get gas from the register? Like, what are they doing with those gas cans? No,
nope, those Diet Coke.
It was also 8:30 a.m.
We also get the best breakfast burritos from our gas station. So it's very common on a Saturday morning to do like a breakfast burrito and Diet Coke run at like 8 a.m.
From the gas station, which isn't a restaurant name for those of you who are highly confused right now. That is an actual gas station where you go to pump your gas and have a panic attack in the car wash.
Yep, exactly. I can't do the car wash part, but I can do the breakfast burrito part.
So you park your car, get out, the car wash goes through the car wash, you just catch it on the other side.
Do you know, I did try going in one of the older fashioned car washes to see if I could like get over my fear. You know, the one that you just drive in and the car wash moves around you rather than you moving through the car wash.
Yes.
And I'm still scared of it. So it's just all car washes now. Anytime water touches my car, I start crying. This time I was shaking because I felt like here's the thing. I go into situations and like, it's not even worst case scenario. It's like a scenario that never could happen. But like, if it's going to happen, I'll be the first person that it ever happens to. So I like park in the car wash. I'm not even moving in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I parked in the wrong spot. This car wash is going to tear my car to pieces. I will be smashed in this car wash. It's like, I don't think that like physically, I don't think that can happen. I don't think there's a world in which that is possible.
Look, if you can dream it, you can do it.
You can do it. That's if there's anything you learn from this podcast, I hope it's that.
Yes, I definitely hope it's that. If there's one common theme, do you listen to other podcasts? Like, I know you listen to lots of podcasts, but do you listen to any podcasts specifically for like inspiration or comparison or to like learn things from to bring into our podcast?
To bring into okay. Actually, it's probably one that like kind of got us thinking about like how this could actually work because like I think most of the time I listen to podcasts where there's like a expert on something, and so I'm podcasts and
one
we
of
are
those.
Not. But I started listening to a podcast called Tooth and Claw, which I listen to every week. It's a podcast about specifically animal attacks, and it's a sibling duo and their friend, and one sibling is a literal bear biologist, and one's just Jeff, his brother. And
shout out to Jeff. Shout out to all the Jeffs out there.
I like to think that I am the Jeff of this podcast.
Really?
So I feel good about like I listen to Jeff and I'm like, okay.
I don't know. When I'm like, you know the drama mask? And like one is like a funny one and one is like a sad one. And you're like, are you talking about comedy and tragedy? I'm like, yeah, something like that. Sorry, you're the Jeff? If anyone gets to claim Jeff, remember when I couldn't pronounce the Plantagenets? I still can't.
You were close that time.
I've practiced. Yes. When I was editing it, I was like literally shadow pronouncing. Like I was like,
mouthing it.
Plantagonites.
So Tooth and Claw I listen to a lot. And then I also listen to one which is super popular called Celebrity Memoir Book Club, where they only really read celebrity memoirs and talk about them. And I like them specifically because they are not afraid to be mean. And I aspire to that level of just like not holding back at all. Just like saying whatever I feel, even if it's mean. And I just really appreciate that. So I take some inspiration from that. Which is why I like this podcast, because I don't know sometimes what you're going to say that could potentially get us canceled. It's like having dad around, right? Like the intention is
we've talked about this. Dad is a very sweet man. The intention is there, but it's like a black man walks in and you're like, Dad, what are you going to say? Like, we know whatever it's going to be well-intentioned, but what are you going to say? And
why is it something, it's something like a joke that he definitely heard on like the assembly line 20 years ago. So like, it was a different time. And sometimes also Dad is the funniest in that he tells jokes and then he doesn't laugh. So you never know like if he knew he said a joke or not. And my kids are always taken off guard by that because they're always like, was Poppy being funny? Like, are we supposed to laugh at that? I'm like, yes, he wants you to laugh at that because he just says it so quietly and deadpan. Sometimes like even just like quietly to himself. I remember one time, it was when I was dating Justin, my husband, and we dated long distance the entire time. Our family loves a long distance dating situation. We were dating long distance and Justin had come to visit and he was talking to Dad about something. And somehow he was talking about like a friend who had just been to Russia. He's like, yeah, he went to Moscow. And Dad under his breath was like, yeah, but I bet Moscow is better than Pa's cow. And we were like, what, Dad? I remember being so like the cow belonging to Ma is better than the cow belonging to Pa's cow. And I remember just being so embarrassed. I was like, please just ignore the man in the corner whispering to himself about Ma's cow. That is my father.
Was it Thanksgiving one year? He made the joke, I stand on gourd for you.
Honestly, I like it.
I remember somewhat related, but also not related, but some related because it's talking about Dad. The first time I think Seiko came to Mom and Dad's house for like a dinner, before we eat dinner at Mom and Dad's house, they say a prayer, right? Like they bless the food, like thank whoever made it and bless the food or whatever. And Dad also thanked Seiko for being there, but he used my ex-girlfriend's name.
No!
Which is really great because it's like, beginning of a relationship and there's like remnants, there's fragments left of the previous relationship that you're still like, you're just walking on eggshells. And Dad just straight up calls Seiko by my ex-girlfriend's name. I'm like, thanks, Dad. Thanks for really doing me a solid on this one.
I will tell you that because her name was similar to Seiko's.
Well, it started with an S.
It started with an S and it's 2 syllables. And that's difficult for our family.
I love that. It's really difficult.
When you started dating Seiko, I made a rule that if I ever like thought of or came across your ex-girlfriend's name, I had to say Seiko 5 times to myself to just like get myself in the habit of saying Seiko more. And I've done it. I will do this to this day, right? And I don't know if you know this, but like if I've seen the name on Facebook before and I like, we'll see it and I'm like, Seiko.
Like it's Candyman. You turn off the lights in the bathroom. You're like, Seiko.
I'm just like, I'm so worried about it. Like one day and then Seiko will be so mad at us. Seiko does not care.
We've been married for over 11 years. I don't think Seiko would be like, I'm sorry, what did you say? If anyone could laugh it off, it's her anyways.
I'm leaving you. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I am out of here. So podcasts, I think we probably have a pretty good overlap in some of the podcasts. So you introduced me to the Tooth and Claw podcast, which I always call Tooth and Nail for some reason.
Okay.
But Tooth and Claw, yeah. I listened to that one. Definitely the Conan podcast, the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. And I listened to Smartless when I'm like...
Oh yeah, I love Smartless.
Smartless is a good one. And as I was listening to Smartless, I was actually listening to it just before today. I was doing like some stretching and a workout. And I'm like, let me get really worked up for this workout by listening to a podcast. It's just...
Amped.
Yeah, it's either like just the most obscene gangster rap or just 3 people chopping it up.
I listened to ours yesterday while working out. I listened to my own voice.
How narcissistic can you be? You're listening to yourself while you're...
And it just fuels me. I'm like, oh, it sounds so good.
But as I'm listening to Smartless, I'm like, look, I'm just going to be honest on this one. There's not a lot separating our podcast and the Smartless podcast. Like if we want, like really, there's not a lot, right? They go into that podcast, they don't know the topic. Like they're gonna
That's
just,
true.
right?
True.
And then very similar to us, I don't know usually, with the exception of Mac and me. And I think also what our canceled episode, there was one episode we didn't put out where I knew ahead of time what the topic was going to be. But then I realized that minor difference there's one minor difference that actually makes the world of difference. And it's probably the reason that they're on Sirius and you and I, well, you're in a laundry room. Like that's, I think.
Yeah. Studio.
The laundry studio. Their unknown is an A-list celebrity. Like it is like
Mark Zuckerberg.
It is Barack Obama. Like it's like guys. All right, yours is today. We are going to talk about, and everyone's waiting. You're like the Pickering Town Center.
Today's is going to be like
unsubscribe. Stop. Who are these people? I don't want to listen to two people I don't know talk about things I don't care about. And I know all we do.
I will tell you.
At the beginning of every episode, all we do is make fun of our own podcast.
Yeah.
And in hopes that it's charming people to maybe like this. But I also think it's us just being honest on what we're actually doing right now.
I mean, we are a very self-deprecating people. Our people are very self-deprecating. But I will say, one of my friends texted me and said he was at his kid's hockey practice the other day, and he ran into, at hockey practice, one of the friends that we went to Exeter with. And he said, have you heard that the Porters started a podcast? And he was like, no way. And then he said his girlfriend, who also went to school with us, looked it up, and she was like, there's one about Exeter? I was like, got him. Yes.
And they didn't listen. That's how that ends. They're like,
I don't want to hear
for the news.
Exeter. Like, what a fun thing to talk about in hockey.
But I did get it.
So it's real grassroots.
Yes, very mostly root. It's actually just mostly root. Nothing has actually breached the surface yet. It's a lot of root right now. But I was going to say, one of my very good friends who I mentioned in the the Super Mario Brothers episode, when I talked about GoldenEye, that I would go to this guy's house and play GoldenEye every day. And I haven't talked to him in a very long time. And I just sent him a message being like, hey, I'm going to be in Ajax in December. Like, we should definitely meet up. And he responded with a screenshot he's like, I just got to work, and it's a screenshot of the Super Mario Brothers. And he was like, GoldenEye for life, like water gun emoji. And I was like, this just warms my heart.
I know, it is heartwarming. Like, oh, this is so nice.
So like that's another thing we do in most episodes. But really, for the people that have like been listening since day one, I'm very grateful seeing the comments from the same people again and again. Like, I actually really like seeing this little group of 4 people who are like, another good episode, or
Tuesdays and sometimes Wednesdays,
but also Thursdays and maybe Fridays.
It's the only time I ever go on Facebook. I don't use Facebook otherwise, but then I'm like, ooh, someone, like, I get to post it and then have a little conversation with people underneath the post.
Well, see you in a week. This is exactly what everyone warns against when you're trying to build a community. They're like, you really have to stay engaged, right? Constant contact with your community. Content, just pump out. We log in on a Tuesday. We're like, new episode just dropped. See ya next week, or on my birthday when I say thank you to everybody who wished me a happy birthday on Facebook. Yeah, that's what Facebook is for.
I do have a question this week.
Get it.
So this question actually comes from Reddit. I saw it on Reddit and I was like, that's such a good question. It was specifically about countries or like hometowns, but I think we can do it about Dreyer. So you know how you go to certain countries and they have like a traditional gift that they would give you, or you would bring to home as a souvenir to your family? Like, I went to Canada, I'm bringing home maple syrup candy, like something like that. What would you give to someone who is visiting Dreyer Drive to remember us by?
Oh, so not something that we would have received quite often, something that we would give as like, this is to remember.
They are a visitor to us, and like you've been to Dreyer Drive and you get to now take this and put it home, put it in a drawer and never look at it again.
So it can't be a virus or a sickness of some sort.
No. Or like dog hair. They'll get that anyway.
All right, how about a lint remover then? Like one of those like rolling dog hair removers. We'll give you the dog hair and the remover because we really think about you like that.
My brain went through so many iterations of like things that I'm like, this is iconic, our house. But
well, this is what I love about some of these questions. And we had talked about this, I think, maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago, where I've started keeping that like story journal. And one of the reasons is because there's all of these anchors that are created. And like the scrambling that my brain is doing right now to try to answer the question, like, do you remember those plastic cups that we used to have? They were kind of like they had like 3 bulges on them. And we used them for so long that they just cracked. All of the insides cracked, but the outside was still intact. And you didn't know if today is going to be the day that you're going to take a drink and
disintegrate.
It's going to disintegrate, or you're going to get like plastic shards stuck in your throat.
Oh, when they talk about like forever plastics, like, oh, if you use plastic, those plastics exist in my body. I'm like, my body's been plastic.
It's been plastic. Please.
Those cups were from the Dynamite dollars. Like, they definitely have forever plastics in them. And we definitely put them in the microwave sometimes.
Yeah, we did. Sometimes in the oven, they melted a little bit. We left them on the stovetop. They melted a little bit. Like, we're still good with this one, right?
Okay, I have my idea for the gift.
I also have mine, but you go first.
Okay,
You go
I'll
first.
go first.
As Noah said yesterday when she opened the door for me after I brought the garbage outside, ladies first. She opened the door. She opened our main entrance door. She bowed and she went, ladies first. I died laughing.
Favorite thing about Noah is that she like does not respect the gender binary. She's like, not for me.
She, to this day, everybody is just a he. So even with Naya, she's like, he's drooling. And Sega's always like, she like the amount of times that she is said in our house to correct Noah, and she just doesn't care. It's always he. She's like, look at him. He's drooling.
I support her. I support him. So the thing that I would give out is like, do you remember when Mom went through a period of time? She went through a period of time where she made a lot of crafts, and
I know where you're going.
Specifically, it was a wooden block craft. Is this what?
Oh no, I think you were going with I thought you were going to say the pantyhose potato people.
Okay, saying that out loud. How dare you?
Where did that? I swear to you, that came up like in the moment. I have not thought about those for decades.
Yes. Mom and Annie Gale made Christmas elves.
I'm so bad. Hold on, I gotta turn the air conditioning up.
They would stuff these old pantyhose with like cotton and then like twist off like noses
and little dimples.
And little dimples, so they look like little potato. Honestly, I would love one right now. No, this is another one. They're just like really ill-conceived crafts that they were like, this is gonna go viral. It was a wooden block rabbit that was, its legs and arms were potpourri. So it was a painted wooden block, which we all helped paint because Mom would be like, I need to make 50 of these by Christmas, and so we'd all be like sitting there painting sage green bunny blocks, and then she would stuff like netting through the arms and legs and fill that with potpourri, and you kept them in your bathroom. Like
specifically on the toilet tank.
On the toilet. It was a toilet accoutrement. And that's what I would like to give to people, because I would love to see the look on people's face when you're like, block bunny for your toilet. And they're like,
Everybody's using them these days.
They are hot.
I like it. I've completely forgot about those. I can smell the potpourri though right now. Like
it wasn't good.
It was definitely white rose, bulk bought.
And there was always just like a layer of dust because they just sat with like the fancy soaps on the back of the toilet that no one was allowed to touch, and the bath beads. Remember, you like.
I've read all about those too, but right away I can feel them right now. I am squeezing those little bath beads. That's what I want to do. Just a gif of me. No, like obviously no sound, but like just me doing that action of squeezing the bath beads as the social media. Yeah. Also us, we can do that. We don't need a lot of outside help for that. So we talked about in past episodes, we talked about the garbage gum, right? We talked about that, like this crate of gum that we found in the landfill. If you don't know what we're talking about, go and sort through the past episodes and try to find it. I don't know which episode that was in. Maybe your brain is better than mine, but I don't remember that. But if you want me to remember pantyhose potato people, I got you, fam.
I got it.
There was one year where I guess maybe Dan was in like a scout group, a Cub Scout group through the church, and they were going to do this fundraising activity. And the fundraising activity was to sell caramilk bars to the neighborhood and make that money for the big jamboree. I don't know. I think that's what it's called, but like the big Cub Scout outing. And they were a little bit different from the regular caramilks that you would get in the store. The regular caramilks, I think, had like 2 rows of 6 or 2 rows of 5 caramel squares for the chocolate bar, and they were in the brown and orange wrapper.
Classic.
These were, I believe, 16 squares of chocolate. A little bit rare. Collector's item. Limited edition. 16 squares of caramel filled delight. And I think they had a different wrapper. The wrapper was like white and brown, I think. And we had cases of those chocolate bars. Have I told this story on the podcast already?
Nope.
We had cases and cases and cases of these, like cases. Have I said that already? There were multiple cases. There were multiple cases. And so we got them to do this fundraiser thing, and the fundraiser never happened. Like, not a single chocolate bar was sold. And they sat in these cases above the garage door, and it was like, you guys do not touch these. These are for the fundraiser. And then like 3 months went by, and we're like, did anyone notice? Like, we still got the chocolate bars and no one's doing a fundraiser. And so like me and Dan would sneak out there in the dead of winter, and we would crawl up to the little like storage area over the garage door, and we'd open a case, and it started with one. We're like, let's just eat.
It always starts.
Let's just eat one. And so we went out there and we had 8 and 8 because there were 16 squares, my friends. And they were frozen. And so like they took a little bit longer to eat because they would. And then so like then we're like, no one noticed. And the fundraiser still hasn't happened like 2-3 weeks later. We're like, you want to go out there again and do that again? And so we went out there, and now we each had 1 chocolate bar. And then we went out there and each had 2. And then we started taking some for the road. We'd be like, let's eat 1 in the garage, the most sanitary and safe place to eat your meals. And then stuff our pockets with the caramels to take for the road. And then we started distributing them. Like, you don't even like, here you guys go. You guys have it. So I see a world where somebody comes to our house and they're like, hey, thanks so much for having us. We're going home now. And you go, not before I give you one of these, potpourri block bunny. And they're like, thank you so much. And they leave, and they're walking down the driveway. And
standing in the alley.
I don't want to be caught distributing the fundraiser chocolate bars, but I go, hey. And they turn around, they go, hey, yeah, we're just heading home. And I go, not before I give you one of these. And I hand them a 16-piece caramel. And they go, 16 pieces? I've never seen one of these. And I'm like, you're welcome.
And then they open it and they're like, why is there a white film over the entire thing? Like,
well, that's because they've been frozen and thawed over 4 years. Because they were in there for years. Not 4 years, for years. They were in there for years. And we just kind of picked at them until one day Dan and I went out there and we're like, this is the last one. We ate all of these caramels. And I don't think anyone ever noticed. I think Dad went in the...
I was going to ask, did anybody ever like say, where are the cases of chocolate bars we left at the porter's house?
No, probably like 6 years later, Dad went into the garage to like clean it out to make room for bumpers for cars that we didn't own. And he was like, oh, I guess I forgot to clean out all these empty caramel boxes.
He goes to lift the box and it's so light. Falls off a ladder.
He's like, Ryan Daniel, can you please come help me with all of these heavy caramel bars? They're so heavy because there's 16 pieces.
And you guys are pretending they're really heavy. Chocolate bar.
Glad no one ate these.
You're like, better go put them with the peach gum storage.
So I think caramel chocolate bar that was bought for a fundraiser that was never fundraised. My name is Jeff. I'd like to just introduce myself. I'm Jeff.
I'm the Jeff.
I love that we're just absolutely destroying Jeff. He's probably this like brilliant guy who just happens to talk like he's always stoned.
Love Jeff. Yes, he has a very distinct voice, Jeff. And it took like when we first started listening to it as a family, my family hated the sound of Jeff's voice, and now grown to love it so much, and we are just Team Jeff all the way. So Jeff, if you're out there listening,
he's listening.
We love you.
If there's something that I've learned about this podcast, it's they're listening.
It's reach. The reach is so wide and all encompassing. All right, we have a topic to talk about today. Okay, so our actual topic today is about MuchMusic.
Oh!
the Canadian music video channel. Music video channel. There we go.
I like it.
The Canadian video music channel. So if you didn't grow up in Canada, you need to know that Canada had its own version of MTV called MuchMusic, and MuchMusic was a delight. We didn't actually ever get MuchMusic. It was a cable channel. We never. Sometimes
we got the fuzzy version. Yeah, we got the fuzzy version of it.
If you turned it to 29, it was like you could get a little bit of it. But MuchMusic did play a large part in our upbringing because we were at other people's houses, and MuchMusic was how you found out about music in 1996. So just to start off, MuchMusic, okay, first of all, blew my mind. Much was owned by Chum, and Much is just an anagram of Chum. Did you know that?
I'm literally looking at the logo right now, like, yeah, that's... Wild.
That was the craziest thing that I learned today. I was like, how am I that dumb? It's 4 letters, and I never once put together that.
All right, we're both Jeff. All right, but we're both Jeff.
This is a Double Jeff podcast. So Chum is
Double
company.
Jeopardy? Can I double Jeopardy? Can I? Sorry, just
this is actually the second time you've mentioned Double Jeopardy on this
no
podcast.
double Jeopardy. Jeff, we are both Jeff.
Yes.
It's Jeff Jeopardy.
I just feel like are you trying to mention Double Jeopardy as much as possible?
Well, the first time I mentioned it, I was talking about the Ashley Judd movie Double Jeopardy, where she goes to jail for killing her husband who isn't dead, and then comes out of jail and actually kills him. For those of you who want to know the entire plot of that movie in 7 seconds.
No spoilers.
I like to give the spoiler alert warning after the spoiler. Oh yeah, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Sorry if that was your movie this weekend. So
for those people who are listening to this podcast in reverse. 50% of our listeners. Sorry.
I'm going. Much Music was started by Chum in 1984, the year I was born. And it was just in answer to MTV. Like MTV was putting on music programming and Canadian channels needed as well. For 10 years, it operated only as a music video channel where it was just doing 8-hour blocks of music with scheduled shows, but they were mostly interview shows. They were not like reality shows or anything like that. That's how it operates for 10 years before it formally becomes Much Music. It goes for 10 years, and they also try to launch it in the States as well. Like there was a
Did they really?
called Much Music USA. It didn't go super well. Turns out like Canadian music is a very specific genre that not everybody loves as much as we do.
They made it to Buffalo, and everyone's like, "Turn around, go home," and they're like, "All right."
They're like, "We do not like bare naked ladies as much as you do. Please leave us alone."
But can you leave us a little bit of Alanis Morissette? Can we have Alanis? You take everything else. We're going to keep Alanis.
So in 1995, still doing really well. That's when they changed the Canadian Music Video Awards to the Much Music Video Awards. And they also start doing some partnership with MTV where they share programming. It's doing fine. And I watched a documentary about this. I think it was called... What's the address for it? Because it's the address. Sorry, 299 Queen Street West is the documentary name. And it said what was really cool about Much Music in Canada was that it was very accessible to the outside person. It was in a building that was had lots of windows around it, and so when they were doing interviews with very famous people, like anybody could just be on the street watching or being a part of it. People would knock on the doors and they would interact with people, and there is video evidence of you doing this.
I was like, does Jacqueline know? Does Jacqueline know that
leading you along on this one.
Once you said Much Music, I'm like, I've got the best story from Much Music, and I don't know if Jacqueline knows, but apparently you went back and read your journal.
I was like, why did Ryan get to be on Much Music? Not me. Everybody loves Ryan so much more. He's everybody's favorite. That's what I would say.
So, do I tell the story?
Yes, you do.
So, one day, me and two of my buddies decided we were going to skip school. We're just like, let's go downtown, which is like the skip school thing that you would do. I must have been in like grade 11 or 12. I can't remember, but I was in the almost finished high school years where I went to school very seldomly and just for tests, basically. But we decided we were going to skip school. And so I think my buddy drove us downtown. We parked. We got a street dog, walked around the streets of downtown, just feeling like some kids experiencing freedom. And we're like, hey, let's go check out what's going on with Much Music. Like, let's go see if they've got an interview or a guest, for the very reason that Jacqueline just stated. Sometimes they had these windows open right out to the street, and they'd like the VJs would come out and chat with people on the street, or people would have signs or whatever. And so we went to Much Music, and I think they were talking about how like maybe the following day, Christina Aguilera was going to be there for like an in studio performance, and that they'd given away a bunch of wristbands to people, big Christina Aguilera fans, to come and watch her do this live show. So we're waiting outside and we see this happening, and we're like, yo, should we try to go on Much Music? And we're like, let's do it. So we went to the dollar store and we bought some markers and some big like Bristol board. Is that a Canadian thing?
Yes, it definitely is. Here they would just call it poster board.
Poster board. So we went out and bought these giant pieces of thick paper, and with markers just wrote something. I can't even remember what we wrote, but we wrote something about like Christina Aguilera, we're her biggest fan, or Gina Bottle. Now, if you go back into past episodes, episodes, you'll hear me talking about how I like was a hardcore hip hop fan, listening to NWA and Snoop Dogg. But for that day, I was a Christina. Well, actually 2 days because, well, you'll hear the story. So we go outside of MuchMusic. We've got these signs that we were like the biggest Christina Aguilera fans. And wouldn't you believe it? But the VJ came over and interviewed us about Christina Aguilera, or like talked to us like, we got some fans outside. They're the biggest Christina Aguilera fans. It's three dudes just be like, Genie in a bottle, Genie. And they came out. And I think they asked us to sing Genie in a Bottle. And if we could...
And do a dance.
And do a dance.
I know it was a dance because I know exactly what dance it was.
So we did this dance and we sang Genie in a Bottle and we got wristbands to go and see Christina Aguilera. I think it was the next day for the in-studio performance. I don't remember any of the in-studio performance except for like the general atmosphere and like having like a line of sight as we were there, I think the following day. But what was really funny was that show was live and then rebroadcast the next morning. And so I was like in my high school marketing class, and my teacher, Miss Anderson, was like, I wasn't at school the day before, right? Like I had called in sick or whatever. And she was like, hey, how are you feeling? And I'm like, feeling great. I'm going to see Christina Aguilera tonight. And she was like, okay. She was like, I was getting ready for work this morning. And she's like, and I heard some voices on the TV that sounded very familiar. And wouldn't you know it? But you and two of your friends are on TV with signs begging for Christina Aguilera wristbands. And I'm like, yeah, we got the wristbands. And she was like, very clever. She's like, clever girl.
Like A+. Clever girl. I remember that it was a dance because it was specifically the like line dance that we used to do to the song Saturday Night. So the Saturday night, I mean, the air is getting hot. And yeah, I remember that.
Did you change my shirt after this?
You did it like slow to the tune of Genie in a Bottle. And it looked like you had like coordinated to dance specifically for Genie in a Bottle. And they were like, these guys have been practicing in their room.
True fans. True fans.
True fans. The thing about that I loved most about MuchMusic was the MuchMusic video dance party, which is when they would it was sponsored by MuchMusic. Your school would pay them to bring these giant video screens that would then play the music videos of the songs that you were listening to while on the dance. So then nobody danced because they were staring at the giant screen. I feel like we went to a lot of dances when we were teenagers. Like that was definitely part of our upbringing, was like our moms was being like, off you go to a dance. And sometimes they were MuchMusic dances, sometimes they were church dances, which
quite often
a whole other kettle of fish.
I'm sweating. My arms are dripping sweat, just for the record.
And like those dances had a lot of like coordinated line dances and or break dancing, which is just like the best of both worlds. But I remember once, I'm gonna have to put a picture in the show notes. I was probably in grade 10 and I cut all my hair off, and like really short. It was like short in the back, like probably like a Karen haircut. It was short in the back and like very rounded in the front. And I felt like so like cool and sassy, and I was wearing like my cargo pants and my small t-shirt and be like, oh, like I'm the coolest like 1990 girl that ever lived. And I had these sunglasses that had blue lenses, and I was gonna wear them to the dance. And I was like getting ready with my friends. I was like, I look so good with this haircut. I got the freshest cargo pants, the best sunglasses. And I showed up to the dance, and my best friend's brother looked at me and he said, you look like Millhouse. And then he called me Millhouse for the next 3 years. And I was like, I hate it here. And now anytime I look at the pictures of me with that haircut, I'm like, that was my Millhouse face.
Yeah, dude. He wasn't wrong. Actually.
He wasn't wrong, and he was very mean. It was not one of your nicer friends. It was definitely your meaner best friend.
That is amazing. You thought you were going in there like Fifth Element. What's her name?
Yes, that's exactly what I thought I was.
You're like, I am the Fifth Element.
Cool internet girl. And I was like,
no, hey, Millhouse.
It's giving Millhouse.
Did you run out and throw those blue sunglasses in the garbage and stomp home?
I think I might have cried. So
you just put them in one of your cargo pockets, didn't you? I was like, I'm going to throw these right in my cargo pocket.
I put them in and then pulled out another pair of sunglasses.
Orange, wide frame, mom personality dimensions.
It's like, and now you look like Sideshow Bob. I'm like, okay, I don't need to look like every Simpsons character with these glasses. Just leave me be. So yeah, the whole thing about MuchMusic was that it's very accessibility. Like anybody could go to a MuchMusic dance party. Anybody could show up at MuchMusic, and like maybe you'd see Britney Spears. Like you could never. And when I was watching this documentary, it was with a lot of the VJs. Like, was it George
George
Stroumboulopoulos and those people. And they were talking about, like, as VJs, they were not given a script. They were not given a teleprompter. Like, the whole conceit of MuchMusic was like, off you go. Like, they didn't even vet their interview questions. They were allowed to do and say whatever they wanted. And that's what people liked about MuchMusic.
Rick Campanelli.
What was the girl that I really liked? Oh, Sukhyun Lee.
Yeah, she was awesome because she had like this really broad knowledge of music. And so sometimes she'd be doing these like underground heavy metal bands, but then other times she'd be interviewing like super underground Canadian hip hop artists, which I really liked. She just like had that really deep knowledge. And there was, I think actually Rick Campanelli was the one that interviewed us. I think perhaps. Really? I think it might have been him, because I remember being like, maybe this won't make it in, but I remember being like, this guy's kind of short. I never knew this guy was so short.
Wow. And then there was Ed the Sock too.
Ed the Sock, absolutely. They actually, so MuchMusic, their Rhapsody was so good. Like they actually played really good hip hop. And I remember just watching it anytime it was on. And there would be like, so I don't know if like Americans are aware of this, because I don't think in the US they have as much of a problem as we might have in Canada with this thing. But by law, Canadian radio and television have to broadcast a certain percentage of Canadian artists, right? So when you're listening to a Canadian radio station, they actually have to have like a certain percentage of Canadian artists as their playlists, I guess, or the media that they're actually pushing out. And so you would actually just get like, all right, well, this year we have 2 Canadian hip hop artists that release songs. So you're going to get nothing but Rascals and Classified every time you turn on MuchMusic, which is kind of cool. Like, you get to know their music. It feels kind of like cool because they're Canadian. They're putting out music that you happen to like.
Yeah, and they were really good about sandwiching those Canadian artists between like established international artists. So you'd be like, oh, here's Elton John, and the next one is like, here's Jan Arden, and suddenly like it would like legitimize Canadian artists because they were being played alongside of like established international artists too. The only problem with that specific thing is that might have actually brought down like the eventual downfall of MuchMusic.
Oh, how so?
That was a big problem. So they were doing really well. It was mostly through the 90s and into like 2002, 2003. They're doing great. But MTV launches in Canada in 2001. And in 2001, they are pressured to then put out the same type of programming that MTV is putting out, which is MTV barely plays music. There's a couple music programs, but it's mostly reality TV. So MuchMusic feels like it kind of has to pivot to meet that. And then because of the restriction on what they're able to play. So their first year, I have the actual deal that they made. 10% of their music videos had to be Canadian in the first year. By year 3, it had to be 20%. And every year after that, it needed to be increased by 5%.
Wow.
So by the time we're in the 2000s, like their hands are kind of tied a little bit in the way, like there's just not that much Canadian content, nor do people ask for that much Canadian content. Like, when MTV is playing mainstream artists and MuchMusic only has like Katie Lang, like obviously people are going to MTV. Sorry, no shade to those Lang heads. So what MuchMusic does is start putting on more reality TV programming and scripted programming to counteract that, because they're not actually playing music. They don't have to then abide by the Canadian music content laws. That is what brings them down in the end, is because they are no longer playing music. And at that point, it's like, why not just watch MTV? They're bought out by Bell. Bell owns CTV. And all the VJs that are interviewed said as soon as Bell took over, like it was very corporate. They went from having one showrunner to 6 VPs in the room with them at all times. And they wanted a really polished, Americanized version of the channel. And so MuchMusic was kind of like, I don't know what you want to do. The ratings were horrible at this point in time. Napster is also credited as being like one of the things that also brought about the downfall of MuchMusic. Napster and MTV are happening in Canada at the same time, about 2001, 2002. And people aren't watching TV to find their next like music anymore. They're just downloading it online. So it makes it so that MuchMusic just doesn't have the pull that it used to anymore.
And I remember watching MuchMusic, and you're waiting. You know that somewhere in the next 30 minutes, they're going to play the one song that you're really watching that show for. And then, you're flipping between channels. And then, yes, Napster comes out and you can focus on that one song, only download that one song, or, watch that video online, as opposed to sitting and waiting for 23 minutes to get your 3 minutes. And I remember there were times where the VJ would cut in with like 30 seconds left of the song, or they would talk into 15 seconds of the song. And you're like, bro,
I'm recording that.
Like, I was recording that. I tuned in for this song specifically, and you talked over 45 seconds of the song. Like, Napster, give me what I need.
I remember very specifically one time, my best friend Aaron and I, poor Aaron is like, every episode I'm like, Aaron was there, but we must have been at her house because we definitely didn't have much music at our house, but we were watching and waiting for a specific song. And the band was Before 4, and the song was If You Get Down on Me, I'll Get Down on You. And we were like 15 years old, and we're like watching it, we're like, Before 4, it was a boy band. And I remember you walking into the room and being like, you know what they're talking about, don't you? And we were like, no, dancing? And you were like, you idiots.
Do you remember MuchMusic had a show called Electric Circus?
Oh, I had a friend on Electric Circus. It was his big claim to fame.
So I think it was, I want to say Saturday afternoons, MuchMusic would put on this very, not choreographed, because the dancing itself wasn't choreographed, but it was like they were really trying to replicate the scene of like a rave, kind of, like an electric music concert festival rave in the studio of MuchMusic, where they would just have people dancing in very kind of like electric music ways to electric music. And we would watch it. I remember we would watch Electric Circus, be like just waiting for them to show like the one girl that we thought was cute or the one girl that we wanted to see or whatever. And we would just watch Electric Circus. It was music that we didn't really like or appreciate at the time, but we were watching it just for it. Or to your point, sometimes you knew somebody's older sister or older brother who actually got on Electric Circus, or is like the regular go-go dancer at Electric Circus. And it just felt kind of like cool to watch people that you were one or two connections away from on TV dancing to Electric Circus. And it was just like you're watching them dance to electric music, and then a VJ would like walk through the crowd kind of like vibing a little bit, but then interview people who are dancing, which just like
who are really out of breath. They're like, yeah. This is my favorite one.
Exactly. I'm gonna go. We should try to get some clips from Electric Circus for the post that goes along with this on DryerDrive.com. But yeah, Electric Circus was another one, and every now and then they would sprinkle in like a jungle music song or something that skewed a little bit more hip hop, and I'd get pretty excited about it. But yeah, lots of Electric Circus as well.
I think that's the thing about MuchMusic is I think if you ask anybody who grew up in that era and watched MuchMusic, like they know somebody who was on MuchMusic at some point in time. Some like they might actually be your brother skipping school, but like everybody knows someone who was on MuchMusic because that's how open it was to just anybody.
Yeah, and I don't know if that can exist now, like where you're in the middle of an interview, you're like, hi, A-list celebrity or, international best-selling music artist. Let's go to the street with no security whatsoever and see what the people think of you. And they would literally just walk them out to like that big window. There's nothing separating this person from this high profile person from these deranged high school kids. Be like, I'm your biggest fan.
Hi. I think part of that is just like the politeness and safety that people usually feel in a place like Toronto, or at least Toronto in 1999, where it's like,
sure, you
could do that because like that's the way the city was then. Yeah, but I definitely couldn't happen now. So eventually, CTV buys MuchMusic, and slowly it just begins like a very slow downfall. In 2006, CTV starts laying off MuchMusic workers, and in November of 2008, 105 staff members are sent home. By 2015, the staff are like almost gone completely, and Much dies. I read. So
it no longer exists?
It exists only in digital format now. Yeah, like Much is still like an entity for like they tried to do like a revival on like TikTok and Instagram. I don't think it's done very well. It's an only digital platform. There is still like a a version of it that exists under like the CTV umbrella, but at MuchMusic as we know it does not exist anymore. I read a quote by one of the original producers of MuchMusic, and he said that MuchMusic should be like high school in that it's only important to you for 4 years of your life. And I was like, and he was like, so basically, like we put a timestamp on our own demise because we catered to high school students. Yeah. Specifically and we never like changed with the times. Like the high school students we catered to graduated high school and we were no longer viable or important to them anymore.
They did also spin out a bunch of other, I want to say maybe channels. Like there was that point in history where like you went from overnight from 29 or 30 channels that we had available to us to like 60 channels when we got like BET, MTV started coming into Canada. And then MuchMusic, I believe they spun out like a bunch of other, I want to say channels. Like there was like a Much Vibe. I remember there was a like Much Loud.
Like an easy listening, like more, I can't remember what that one was called.
Hold on. I will tell you right now. Where is it? There was Much Vibe. There was Much Loud. There was
the one that showed only pop-up video pretty much 24/7. It was more
was
my favorite.
I totally forgot pop-up video. That's hilarious.
I would watch pop-up video now. Like nothing was more interesting to me. Pop-up video of Meatloaf, I would do anything for love. put it on my eyeballs right now.
Much Loud, Much Retro, Much Vibe, Juicebox.
Juicebox.
Those were some of the ones that they had, and those were all sold by Bell Media in 2016.
Yeah, that's 2016. They sell off a bunch of the entities and basically shut it down. 2021, that's when they try to relaunch MuchMusic as a digital entity. One of the interviews that I read, it was a piece in a Walrus, the Walrus, and it said the journalist who was writing the piece went down to see like what the MuchMusic building looked like, and the journalist said that the new VJs were inside the windows, knocking on the windows, trying to get people's attention inside, and nobody was paying attention to them. And I was like, that's so depressing.
I'm going to go back. When I'm back in Toronto in December, I'm going to get a Christina Aguilera sign and be like, please, put me on TV. And the security, there's a gentleman outside. He's clearly drunk.
Sir, there is no TV.
So I've got you probably know this because you went through the stuff. I'm just going through some stuff right now on MuchMusic as you've been talking. Do you know what the last music video that MuchMusic aired was?
I do not.
Ooh! All right.
You're gonna teach me something here.
The last music video that the channel aired was Irreplaceable by Beyonce.
Okay. I was hoping that was like a really Canadian artist.
How about if I had $1 million? How about some bare naked ladies? If I had $1 million, we would
Canadian classic.
They play Beyonce, Irreplaceable. I guess maybe the song choice, perhaps, but like, do we not have like a Canadian knockoff version, like a no frills, no name version of the Beyonce Irreplaceable? Like, do we not? I'm pretty sure.
One of the most valuable things about MuchMusic to this day is that it has these archives, these interview archives, and MuchMusic actually owns the last known interview by Tupac.
Really?
Yes. It's a handful of the last known ones from Kurt Cobain, but specifically the last interview that Tupac did was with MuchMusic. And are you fact checked? No. So the thing I was going to mention is MuchMusic also from what I remember, MuchMusic was the one that I think was the channel that introduced Nardwuar to the world, I believe, because I think Nardwuar was very West Coast. They even had the West Coast show, and it was what was her name? Suk-Yun Lee. Suk-Yun Lee.
So Suk-Yun Lee, I think, had a show or was the host of a show called Going Coastal. Maybe if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm getting the host wrong, but it was like a West Coast thing. And up until that point, I believe Nardwuar was a Vancouver only kind of personality, and then MuchMusic started airing lots of his interviews on MuchMusic, and specifically I think on the Going Coastal program. And I hope people know this is the second time on the podcast that I've mentioned Nardwuar. Like, Nardwuar is an absolute Canadian treasure and must be protected at all costs for the types of interviews that he does. But I remember seeing Nardwuar, and the first time I'm like, who is this just loser? And then like you watch him the second time, you're like, actually this is a really good interview. And then you start watching all of his interviews, like, this guy is the genius This guy is an absolute genius when it comes to interviewing celebrities.
I truly aspire. I used up my one truly for the day. I truly aspire to be an interviewer of that level.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's incredible. And I think MuchMusic was the one that introduced him to a bigger platform. And now, like, I think still you go on YouTube, look at his interviews and look at the number of views this guy has, because he racks up millions and millions of views on his interviews.
Yeah, if you wanted to check out the documentary, or anybody does, again, it's called 299 Queen Street West. The only problem about it is that it was produced by Bell, and it does feel a little like damage control-y in kind of rewriting, like, don't worry, we weren't the ones who single-handedly ruined MuchMusic for all of you. I mean, music television doesn't exist the way it did anyway. Bell definitely like had a hand in what happened with MuchMusic, but it was worth it to see, like, they do interviews with all the VJs and kind of explain why for I guess I would say 15 solid years MuchMusic was just like a culture hub for Toronto and Canada.
Yeah, it's that period of time. And I think, yes, maybe a network played in the downfall, but I also just think it was the time, right? Like, it was the cycle. It's these things, they hit when they can hit and they disappear when they're no longer relevant or have the space to occupy. Because as everybody start to move online for all of their music consumption, streaming, you've got YouTube, like, you don't have to wait through commercials. And then you get, I think, like Sirius satellite radio and the different digital platforms that exist, where now you have everything you could possibly want. It's not instant access. It's not instant accents. Like South African.
Now? No. I'll do South African.
Please, no. We can only get canceled twice a year. You've already used that. But really, like, you have this cycle where everything becomes available online, streaming, YouTube, Sirius satellite radio. You just don't have to wait for those things. And so the natural life cycle of music television, MuchMusic or MTV or whatever it is, like, it just kind of dies out. And you saw MTV, luckily, they were able to kind of get that second life with, like, the Rob Dyrdek type shows, the ridiculousness shows. And they're just all about shows. They're like Nickelodeon, but for teenagers.
Yes. Like, my kids watch Cribs.
Is it still a thing?
Yeah.
Like today's celebrities doing Cribs.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't call them celebrities. Heavy on the influencer.
Got
it.
Yes,
they do still do Cribs.
Are they still renting? Are they still renting the apartments?
I think so. I can't remember who it was. I want to say Dennis Rodman did one just recently. And it was in a bus, like his motorhome that he lives in, and that was pretty wild. It's not necessary, like, they're not all like mansions the way they used to be. We're seeing a lot of like alternative living situations. If you want, like, if anybody wants to just really put a cherry on top of this episode, I want you to hit up Spotify and look up any of the MuchMusic dance mixes from, I would say, Dance Mix 94 to Dance Mix 98 are the best ones. But the Dance Mix 96 is my number one all-time favorite. I still will listen to that on Spotify. And it was just like a yearly mix of songs that you could dance to that you could then bring to a dance and do your coordinated line dance to. And it's still just banger after banger.
I love that you went out of your way during the description of it to note that it's songs that you can dance to.
They're songs that you can dance to. And as a dancer.
Thank you for that. And that's why people subscribe to this podcast.
Yep, that's the too short life of MuchMusic.
I agree, but I think to your point of the point of the MuchMusic video DJ, the VJ, who said, like, it's your 4 years. That's how you remember MuchMusic, those 4 years of, like, remember we're in high school and we'd gather around the TV to watch Rhapsody to see if today's the day they're going to play a new DMX song or a new Wu-Tang song or whatever. Like, I remember that clearly. I remember even, like, recording MuchMusic programs because I wouldn't be able to watch it, but if I recorded it, maybe I could.
Or, yeah, I used to overnight babysit a lot when I was a teenager, like, for families, like, if their parents worked the night shift or whatever.
Explain to us how babysitting works.
So babysitting is when parents can't, but I'd always overnight babysit at houses that had MuchMusic, and then I wouldn't go to sleep because I'd stay up watching pop-up video, which, again, for people who don't know, pop-up video it just shows the videos and these little bubbles pop up with facts and about the video itself or facts about the singer. And yeah, I wouldn't go to sleep at night because it was like the only time I could watch pop-up video, and I just I need to absorb 7 hours of pop-up video before I go to school in the morning.
To drop the facts of, like, did you know that the hat that person wore in that music video was actually his own hat? Because sometimes those were the facts. Like, it was like,
yes.
this is really his jacket. You're like, oh, thanks for that. Thanks for that information.
No, I want that now. Bring back pop-up video.
Did you know that this person actually owns this thing that they're owning right now?
Do you know that you can dance to dance music?
Well, I say this at the end of every episode before we go into the Unhinged text, but that was delightful. I like taking these little trips through memory queen streets where you're walking down.
Like I said, like those, it's like nostalgia and it hurts a little bit. Like, ugh, hurt that nostalgia.
We begged for Christina Aguilera wristbands. Begged. And we got them. They told us there were no wristbands left, but
you would plan that dance all night long.
I think we actually, I don't even remember how we decided on that dance. Like, it was just, I think they went to a commercial break.
Like you just fell into it.
I think did they go to a commercial break or a song break and then come back to us and we had a little bit of preparation time? Because it was really weird for us just to be ready for a dance. What a weird thing to have ready in your back pocket, a choreographed line dance, just to be like, you ready? Ready. No words were spoken. It was just like a nod and a nod, and we're like, we're in sync.
All right. Did you want to do your what's it called?
Unhinged text.
Unhinged text.
Yeah.
I found another one, but you can do it this year.
This year. This is my one. This year. Yeah. So today I've got in this very Canadian themed episode, I do have an Unhinged text message that was from last year, right? We just go through the archives in our family chat to be like, when was one time someone sent something complete out of the blue? And remember, most of the times when these text messages are coming into the family chat, we have gone weeks without talking to each other.
And then also the person usually sends it with zero context.
Zero context whatsoever. So like this one, I'm trying to see, it looks like there's probably a couple of weeks before this one came through. So I got Jonathan, our younger brother, sent this message. It said, on another note, I don't think there was a first note, to be honest. No. On another note,
it is very Jonathan to start with that.
And another thing, but he starts with, on another note, I'm at David Suzuki's retirement party, and why does he look so much like Dad? And I responded with, WTF? That's the most random possible party to be at. And he says, it definitely was. I don't know how I got there or why. And that's it. That was it. All right.
Also classically Jonathan to just end up somewhere and be like, what? I don't even want to be here.
There's that scene in the original Dumb and Dumber where I believe Lloyd comes out of a 7-Eleven or somewhere and there's people drinking big gulps. And he's like, big gulps, eh? And they're like, well, see ya. And then just leave. That's it. Which I have to imagine wasn't actually part of the script, right? He just walks and goes, big gulps, eh? And those people didn't have any lines prepared because that wasn't part of the movie. And he's like, well, see ya, and keeps on going. I feel like that's a lot of our text messaging, right? It's just message dropped in and, well, talk to you in 3 months.
It's or that's how Jonathan talks to children. Big gulps, eh? And anytime I'm with Jonathan, I love to watch him interact with a small child because he talks to them like they're a business associate. And last time we were up there visiting last Thanksgiving, and he was just quizzically watching our 2 nephews play, and they're kind of playing loudly, and Addie, my older daughter, looked over at Jonathan, and he was just squinted, head tilted, just watching a child play, he didn't understand what it was doing. Like he was Encino Man who's just been thawed. He looked over and caught Addison looking at him, and he was just like... And they both just died laughing because it's how I know you were a child, so you should have some experience with children. He was born and went straight for a briefcase like Dad used to carry it to church on Sundays to the code. I could hear it. Why did Dad carry a briefcase to church? It was I don't know. He worked at GM. It's such a cosplay moment where Sunday would hit, Dad would put a tie on, use the tie to wipe the grease off of his glasses, and grab a brown briefcase that had a combination lock on it to go to church. And what was inside? Just fisherman's friend. Just fisherman's friend. But we had to have the combination. Dad, can I have a mint? It's oh, sorry, you don't know your combo. Dad, please, a piece of peach gum. Please. Click, click, open up. It was just a briefcase full of peach gum and caramel bars. Well, wonderful episode. That was fun. Thank you very much. And for all of the Crispies that are listening, thank you. Please send us comments or your own memories of MuchMusic. That helps us feel younger and stretch this out for as much as we can get from it. What are we getting from it? I don't know. I sincerely apologize to Katie Lang and her fans. And also Rick Campanelli. That was just some shrapnel that you did not deserve. He is an average size person. Yes. It's just
a little bit taller than you. That's it. Also, long live Rap City. All right.
Okay.
That was fun.
I will talk to you later.